Welcome to Brevard News, your trusted news source in Brevard County. My name is Kevin Jeffrey, your moderator, and I'm joined by some special guests, as always, Katie Delaney, who is running for County Commission Seat 1. Also, Troy Tidwell, who is running for City Council, Titusville City Council Seat 2. And we have a special guest, Kristen Lortie, who is with Brevard Cares Facebook group. I can't get that out. Welcome all. And so we have a lot of things. This was an exciting week this week. Starting off with Rita Pritchett made it a very exciting week. She starts off with term limits for constitutional employees. What's going on here? And so, Kristen, you and Katie were at the meeting. Tell us about it.
So, like we talked about last week, Rita Pritchett brought forward to give term limits to our constitutional officers, and thankfully, she didn't get a second on that
Motion.
motion. And it was pretty interesting because Commissioner Tabaya, he actually filled out a form that said that it was a conflict of interest for him to be involved in this vote because he's running for one of those constitutional officer positions. The interesting part is
But
that
she's running, right?
exactly, Rita Pritchett is also running for one of these constitutional office positions. And when I questioned her on it, she basically said that wasn't a problem for her, which I find that very interesting. That it's a problem for one, but not the other. And luckily, she didn't get a second, so our constitutional officers are protected. And we have some really great constitutional officers in Brevard County. And as one of them pointed out, if one of them isn't doing a great job, anybody could run against them and take their job.
Now, you want to credit Tobiah, but he wasn't exactly forthcoming with this, right? To tell us about it, Kristen.
That's correct. And I want to also compliment Katie and the Brevard Care Citizens Group because on Facebook, she called this out. She found an agenda item attachment on the background detail of the commissioner meeting, and that was what disclosed the conflict of interest.
The devil is in the details. Right?
Commissioner Tobiah did not reveal it at
Oh.
the meeting. He did not tell anyone, and Katie was the one who outed it, and I amplified it as well. But it was because we were having the social media chat on the Facebook forum and asking about this conflict of interest. So that was really notable that Commissioner Tobiah did not, and that Commissioner Pritchett decided that she was going to plunge ahead anyway, which is what she often does on these types of measures. But here's something else to note. There were multiple public comments that weighed in on this issue. And so
On your
really,
Facebook page or?
no, right
Just
at the meeting.
okay, the meeting,
Yeah,
okay.
because so what I did was I did a tally of the public comments. 3 of the constitutional officers came in. They all opposed it. And then there was 4 public comments, Katie, myself, and 2 others that gave really substantive, I felt, comments to oppose this issue. And then there were 3 comments that supported Rita Pritchett's proposal. It was really actually a great exercise that she inspired us all to go down there to the county commission meeting and to weigh in a civic manner. And so the commissioners had all of that data when they were deciding not to second the motion. So it wasn't just like it was just willy-nilly. There had to be, but this, I want to point out, took a substantial amount of time from all these people's schedules just to weigh in on this problematic proposal that is somewhat self-serving to Rita Pritchett and also to commissioners.
Right.
To be able to keep running themselves through, right, when they term limit out of the commissioner.
So what would she gain from this? What would be the purpose
What
of
would
her
happen
doing
is
this?
that over time, so the proposal was that there would be 3 terms that the officers could have starting 2024. So that means 12 years from now. Then what would happen is that these constitutional officers would term limit out. So let's say she was still a commissioner, or not she was still a commissioner, but if any commissioner, if this were happening today, what would happen is those positions would term limit out and she could get the job more easily.
Oh, okay.
So she's paving the path for commissioners to recycle to continue on their plans, their retirement plans by hopping into one of the constitutional officers. And what she's declining to notice is, or to honor, is how much background, how much experience, and how valuable these positions are. So she's minimizing that while maximizing the opportunity for city commissioners to shuffle around into these roles. And by the way, to keep their retirement pensions going, because then she would stay in the state retirement pension. And guess what? These offices pay quite a bit more than the county commission offices.
Double.
So they would have very pleasant retirement accounts, both Tobiah and Pritchett. But do they really want the job? Some of us suspect not. So especially when they're going up against people who really have the experience. It's really it's just very deplorable behavior from our county commissioners.
So tell us, everyone's for term limits. What is the difference between the term limits as with the county commission, say for example, and the constitutional office?
So what happens is that on the constitutional offices, right, those having term limits, there's a large argument that institutional knowledge that they gain over time allows them to serve the residents better over time, because they keep getting better at their positions, right? And unless they're challenged, which they can be challenged any 4 years if someone can do the job better. Now, the argument on the commissioner side is that they're policy makers and that it's not as essential that they have that tenure, okay? And that by recycling, by terming them out, then we get fresh faces. Now, after Dwight Siegler made his comment last week on this very news network about how he said that even the commissioners were doing better when there was not term limits. So what I wondered to myself was, I said, am I against term limits, or am I for term limits for commissioners, or am I for term limits of commissioners that I'm ready to sunset and to see them exit, right?
Both.
But if we had great commissioners in the positions and they were doing the job that we thought they were going to do,
Correct.
would we really need to term limit them? So I'm even questioning myself on that. But the constitutional officers, I feel solid that we weighed in on the best thing for Brevard residents, that they are able to keep their jobs unless there's a darn good reason why we need to unseat them.
Okay.
For sure.
So Troy, do you have anything on that?
You know, the very thought that someone would want to extend their career just because of their retirement to keep it going is so sad. And that,
It really is. It's
yeah,
the state
that-
of where we are today.
So I think that's a sad state.
Yeah. Now you filed today, or this week, not today, it's Sunday, but this week you filed officially. So now you're an official candidate for seat 2 for the Titusville City Council.
Yeah, it's been a great week for our team. You know, we've been talking about this for 3 months or so, right here on this podcast. But we made it official this week. We filed at City Hall, which for me was a new experience. I've never run for public office, so it was terrific. I got a chance to sit down with City Clerk Wanda Wells and her assistant Jolyn Dunhoff. They were both very gracious, very kind, answered all my questions, and it was a great experience. Now the fireworks started the day after. Less than 24 hours of filing. I got just a ton of phone calls, and the first half of phone calls you might, would be what you would expect, right?
Well wishers.
Well wishers, we're behind you all the way. What can we do to support you? Who can we call? All that kind of stuff. But the other half were people that were telling me that, hey, you won't believe what's happening in the back offices of City Hall, with the staff. They're like, who is, why is Tidwell running? Who's supporting him? Who's behind him? Is there something, evil or nefarious is going on? And I really, they knew who I am. They see me showing up at council. They see me asking lots of questions. They see who I meet with from week to week. So, I mean, they know what's going on. But once I made it official, now they're a little bit nervous.
Who knew Titusville had its own swamp?
I don't
Is
know.
that what you're saying there, Troy?
Yeah, but I have a lot of support, and I don't mean just a few people, and it's really humbling and encouraging at the same time. There's not just a handful; there's just a ton of people. I mean, I believe with everybody's help in this room, it's going to be a huge movement, and we're really excited about it. But I think why they're so nervous, and they're maybe even a little bit scared, is because I make them uncomfortable. They realize that once I get to City Hall that we're going to question, we're going to ask hard questions, we're going to make sure that government is transparent, no one's going to skate by and do anything under the radar. And
Is it fair to say at this point that there's no pushback from the city council with regard to the city commissioner or some of the staff?
in some cases, there is no pushback. In some cases, there is a little bit of pushback. And don't get me wrong, some people might agree with or disagree with me, but I've spent a lot of time downtown, and I do believe there are a couple of people on the council that are actually good and want to do the right thing. also on the staff, there are some good people that work there, that've been there a long time, that really want to do the right thing. But you have a handful of people that have a lot of power, that want to work, behind closed doors, out of the public eye, and want to do their own thing, and they want to subvert the voters. And that's really what's going on. So much of what happens at City Hall is behind the curtain, and we want to expose that, and kind of shine a light on it. And the thing that bugs me the most is these people that are calling the shots, making policy. They're unelected officials, right?
Correct.
They are public servants, yet they're not serving the public. And we have got to fix that. And I know you guys feel the same way, just as strongly. And so,
So is this hubris or is this contempt that they have for the people? Why? Why are you not serving the people?
I'll give you an example. And I do, to answer your question, I think it is contempt. It's a disdain, maybe for the voters, for the public. They believe that they're smarter than the voters. They know that they know what's best. And that's not true. Whether there probably are smart people in city government. I agree with you, but it's not their place to subvert what the voters want. And you can't exclude the voters from, it's a government, of people, by people, for people. So they're being left out of the process right now.
They don't believe that the people matter anymore.
They don't. I'll give you a perfect example. At the planning and zoning meeting this past week, there was a developer slash applicant. They're applying for this huge apartment complex in an area that's adjacent to the hospital that's still zoned medical. It's one of the few places in Titusville that's still zoned medical, and right now it's a beautiful wetland, and so it's undeveloped, and they want to just basically cram these apartment complexes in this area. And so even though this has been going on for almost a year, the developer asked for a continuance or a delay for the third time. And, for the third time in, a year, the citizens that want to speak on behalf of that development that live around the area, they showed up ready to speak, ready to be heard. It's their public hearing, right? It's their right.
So are they just running out the clock? Is that what they're trying to do?
I believe so. They
Yeah.
want to get the voters tired of showing
Okay.
up so they can just do their own thing. But what I thought was terrific, even though they had asked for a continuance, the chairman of P&Z allowed the public to be heard, and I think that was right. The public was there ready to speak. The developer
Great.
was present, clearly ready to speak, even though they wanted a delay, and so he allowed that. And so one of the things that bothered me, and it goes back to the staff and their disdain, you could tell, at least it seemed to me, you could tell that when he made that move, the city staff that was present in the room didn't really like it, right? So that told me a lot. You
Yeah.
could read it in the room. And so he let it continue, and I thought it was fantastic. I hope that sets a precedent for future meetings. But this development is so important because there already isn't enough medical service to meet Titusville. Titusville's growing, right? We're about to hit 50,000, and you know what's happening with the space program. People in Titusville are already having to travel to Coco, Merritt Island, Orlando to see doctors and specialists. So we already don't have enough medical facilities. So it's important that this thing gets voted down. There are a couple of people on council that are not in favor of this, but I don't think they have the votes to squash it. So that's why it's important to get people on council like myself that will vote this kind of stuff down.
And
Excellent.
it's crazy because this stuff is happening at the county level as well. They just did the same thing with Save Sherwood. The Sherwood community, they're dealing with practically the same thing. They want to develop their golf course, and they were on the last planning and zoning meeting on the agenda, and then they took it off right before. And it's, these people were organizing. They wanted to show up and speak on this finally. And it's just sneaky games.
It's disrespectful to the
Yeah.
people, though.
Well, you
For
see this
sure.
also in Coco, right, Kristen?
Yes, I
Okay.
definitely do. So just last week, Katie and I were both, we attended the Coco City workshop. And in Coco, with the same idea with staff, we have the staff precedence of staff having a lot of power. So what we saw when we went in there was I'm smirking because the first thing that we saw was the mayor rearranged his chair when he saw Ms. Delaney come in, because he normally chairs the meeting with his back to the audience, and he has refused.
Wait a minute.
Yes, this is real. It's a real thing.
His back to the
His
audience?
back to the audience.
Who is he talking to?
He talks to the council members, and it is a council workshop, but he chairs the meeting with his back to the audience. But when he noticed Katie in the audience, and then there was a representative for that's challenging Randy Fine, right? Then all of a sudden, the staff was seen shuffling his microphone around to the other side of the table. And 2 years in a row, citizens have requested that the mayor simply face us. So when I did my write-up that I did on this meeting, one of the best things that happened for citizens is we could see the mayor's face, and that's where it started.
So what is this? Is this intentional?
Yeah, very intentional, because he's been asked 2 years in a row, and he's been called out for it, for doing the meetings. I know it's quite rude. It's very rude, but nonetheless, that's just the beginning of things. Because what happens is that the city of Coco is using the workshops as an end run around the public and around putting agenda items on an agenda, so that we can all go down like we did when we spoke out against Ms. Pritchett's proposal, right? The city of Coco, what they're doing is that the workshops are in the city policy. They are supposed to be for discussion only, not decision making. But the Coco city manager, who used to work for the county, the Coco city manager puts at the bottom of all the agendas, action may be taken at this meeting. And what he means is binding action. What he means is decision making action may be taken at these meetings. And I'm involved because 2 years ago in 2021, at these early meetings, they spent $2 million. They allocated $2 million in parks funding. And then citizens came along afterwards and protested and said, wait a second, what do you mean you're spending $710,000 on a splash pad at a park that nobody knows about, and you're allocating this at a poorly attended budget meeting? And so when I came along in September at the real meetings where the public is told about them, it's too late. And they just said, oh no, we decided this back in the beginning of the year. When I found that out, I announced to them right then, I said, City of Coco, I have cleared my calendar and I'll be at all your 2022 budget meetings, because they're making decisions at the beginning of the year, spending decisions, binding decisions, planning decisions, the strategic planning decisions. They're making them during the workshops. And then the way that the mayor runs those workshops is very heavy-handed. He's very controlling about who has the microphone and who can speak. I tried to speak on one of the items that they were talking about after Lorraine Cost made a motion, and the mayor said no.
Wait a minute. Why? What was the reason?
Well, the city policy says that they don't have to allow the citizens the right to participate. And yet earlier in that meeting, do you remember? He seemed to be nodding over to his friends, if you have something to say, then speak up. But when I tried to speak up on an item that the mayor was clearly not in agreement with, no way, Jose, was he going to let me speak on that. So he just, and the very item, this is something that Katie noticed, was that on the city, on their strategic planning, has no strategic plan. Yeah. They have, what happened is, let's talk about this for a second, folks. We're going to introduce Coco. Take a break from Titusville and the Commission for a second. So a couple of years ago, the city was due to update their 5-year strategic plan, which our prior city manager had initiated on behalf of all of the citizens of Coco. And they had many, many pages. 100 pages is what Witten stated at the meeting.
So tell
was
me,
in that plan.
just hold on a second. Tell me, what is the strategic plan? What does it do?
The strategic plan allows the city to create goals for itself, priorities for itself, and then set measurable objectives against those goals. And then when the city spends money, they have to tie it into one of those objectives every time they have an agenda item spending money.
So if you don't have a strategic plan,
It keeps them in
A
check.
free-for-all. It's just a free-for-all. And that what happened was, and there was a lot of protests about this 2 years ago in 2022, saying we need to renew our strategic plan. And city manager Witten would have none of it. And what he did is he replaced it with a 8-page PowerPoint presentation that just simply has priority areas, and the city is going to update their projects as the year goes along in accordance with those priority areas.
Flexible.
Yeah, flexible. But then the city manager said that he modeled his system after Titusville. And whereas Titusville, even though this is problematic in Titusville, what happens in Titusville is they actually do have line items, and there are performance measures in Titusville, and there are targets for those performance measures, and they are updated 4 times a year. So even though there's some issues with the performance measures and there's lack of input, at least Titusville has a skeleton of a real process, whereas Coco does not. And the city manager to even reference Titusville and trying to model that. I personally met with him one time, and it was last year, and the only thing he asked for the meeting was for me to send him those performance measures, and which I did. So was it not disingenuous for the for the Coco city manager to say that, oh, I'm modeling this after Titusville, when he clearly is not?
So I guess we should be happy in Titusville that we're not as bad as Coco. It's debatable.
I mean, I still, because I'd like to
Sure,
clear
go
this
ahead.
note of Titusville is different so that nobody leaves here with that idea. So in Titusville, what happens is they have performance goals that city council doesn't weigh on, that the citizens don't know about, and that are flimsy in many cases, and which I personally tried to advocate to weigh in on, and which I personally tried to get the TEC to weigh in on the city of Titusville performance goals and measures, and guess who fought back? The city manager of Titusville and their representation at the TEC meeting. So Titusville, what they do is they utilize this process in order for the city manager to say, well, we're doing all this great job and we're doing all this on behalf of the city. And then when he has his performance evaluation, he has he has a tool to present to city council members in order to justify it when he gets his annual increases.
So-
And that's what's going on in Titusville. So 2 different cities, 2 slightly different ways, not a great outcome for the residents of these cities.
All of the things that we talked about with regard to the corruption, what keeps coming up is the unelected bureaucrats behind the scene who are making policy for citizens. They were not elected. No one elected them. And so now you see the city managers, of Titusville and Coco, and also the county city manager or the county manager. I mean, this keeps coming up that a lot of the problems are coming from those areas. Show me where I'm wrong. Am I wrong on that?
And they also have, $200,000 plus salaries these people have, and they're making all the rules behind the scenes. They're pushing policy behind the scenes and guiding policy with almost no pushback from any of the elected officials, which the elected officials are supposed to be our watchdogs to push back against these people.
They are supposed to be representing the citizens, right?
Exactly.
I want to call out, because you asked about the county versus
Yeah.
the city, and what I'd like to delineate is that on the managers, I want to say that with the county manager, what I see is that the commissioners are the ones in the driver's seat of these problematic proposals. When it comes to our cities, I really think that they go under the radar. They get very little attention from Florida Today. There's finally an article written today, check it out, about citizen participation in all of our city meetings. But I think that the city managers especially are able to really utilize this lever of power because they have a long tenure, and then the city council members are not strong enough to push back at them.
Is it fair to say that most of the attention of the citizens is directed nationally, right?
Yes.
And everyone's focused on what's going to happen nationally when really what's affecting you is what's happening on a local
Parks,
level,
your
right?
paving, all of your developments, local development, all this is happening at the local level while everyone is worried about these national and state elections. But
Correct.
we need to be focused local, and that's why I'm passionate about what you guys are doing and what we're doing in the Brevard Cares Facebook group, because we want to have a great election this year.
Exactly.
And we need great candidates to have a great election, and we need people voting for those candidates, so they need to be informed. And that's why I'm here.
That was
know
go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a poll or some kind of a study that was done that 80-something% of the people in Congress actually started on the local level. They were either a mayor or they were city council, and they just worked their way up. So really, you can impact the national level if you secure your local area, right?
Yes.
And if everyone around the country did that, I mean, the country would really change. And so that's really what the
We
problem
really
is.
need to elect citizen candidates.
Yeah.
People who are concerned about the citizens, not, any of their own self-interest or special interests. Anybody out there who's looking for a candidate, the number one thing I'm going to ask you to do is go to their financial disclosures. Look at who is behind these candidates. If it's
Absolutely.
full of PACs and, public officials and, major big business, you may want to look into that candidate a little deeper.
Look for the $25 donations. Where there's
Exactly.
grassroots support for your candidate.
Right. So this is the year of the unveiling. I really believe that. I know on a national level it's going to be, and on a local level as well. There's a lot of corruption going on in Brevard County. And thanks, guys. Tell me, Kristen, before you leave, what is your website again, and how
It's
can people get in contact
Thank
with
you.
you?
It's called the Brevard Cares Citizens Coalition. It's on Facebook. It's a group, it's a public group, it's wide open. Anyone can find it, and we want participation. We want rigorous participation this cycle. So join in the discussion, get informed, and share what you know.
It's going to take really the people. There's more people than there are of the
That's it. And the thing
politicians,
is
right?
it's people like us, though, that are actually
Correct.
looking at some of the details about what's going on so that we can better advocate for the people.
Correct.
Because these staff people that we're talking about, this is a very complex discussion because
For sure.
they know how to press all the levers. And so they're against us. But the more that people find people like us to listen to, and then they will know how to make a better, more informed vote because we're not tied to special interests.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us this week. It's George Orwell that said that if you continue to elect corrupt politicians, you are no longer a victim. You are an accomplice. And so it makes a huge difference who you vote for. We have two great candidates we're offering here that will really help clean up Brevard County. Now, as we get ready to go, I want you to like and hit our subscribe button and also share our channel everywhere that you can so that we can get the word out about what's going on across the county. You will not find a more trusted news source than you do here in Brevard News. You have a wonderful week.